So, da 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 dum, la da 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 dum, da 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 dum, la da da dum, da 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 da. There's my spirit that's going across this body. My spirit that's joining me to myself. It's a spirit of light. It's a spirit of light. It's a spirit of love beyond compare. For this life that is wrought can now be taught. And when God doth but join, no man can disembark. And what God doth but join, no man can tear apart. It's a marriage to bring forth my life. It's a joining of spirit that only God can do. It's a working of me, and I carry no tools, but the house that I build is one you can see. It unites and builds and makes me free. It's a marriage of my spirit in God's family of sons, and the man-child is born to resurrect each one. It is love that is real. It is love no man can steal. It's a marriage of the Spirit bringing life, and when God sets the date, I can't be late. It's the joining of my spirit to its resurrected state. Dun, 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 dun. La la la, la 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 la. Because that's beautiful, and that's for your father, my Father's Day. You are my father, and I'm my father. We're all fathers to each other. I'm real proud of myself.
You did a beautiful job there. Oh, I thought it was a beautiful song before.
Yes.
Okay, I want to continue on with what we were talking about last week about life. And I made a little statement here. I wanted to just read this to you. No man or woman can be happy in this life until he or she knows why they are here on this earth. In other words, you find that through purpose and design, through purpose and design. And religions sold us this idea that we don't have life. And we have bought that. I know we bought that. I bought that, I should say. I bought that. I will have life when I get to heaven. That's when I'm really going to have life. So right here, I guess I have, under the idea of religion, I have existence until I get there. I think maybe that's how they sell us this idea. I'm not sure exactly. I need to go back and probably work that out or figure that out, because, you know, here in the Christian ideology, we have to get saved. And of course, that little story that's told, get saved from what? Get saved from what I'm going to do to you if you don't get saved. You know, I'm going to burn you in hell forever and ever and ever. Kind of a strange idea. But if, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, the more I think about what I used to believe and embrace, the more I wonder how in the world I believe that and embrace that. I come back and ask myself, how could I have either been this naive or this ignorant or whatever, and not see through what I was actually saying or believing, even preaching and teaching myself?
What was you thinking?
What was I thinking?
Hey, there is a song about that.
But that was all we were ever presented. It's what we were raised in. It was what even the non-church folks, it's still the way they thought and functioned.
Exactly. It was the mindset. It was a mindset that our parents embraced, our grandparents embraced it, and on the back.
So did Hollywood. Hollywood gave us that idea even.
Back in
I want to read something, well, quite a bit here from Alvin Boyd Kuhn.
Imagine that.
Of course. I mean, I tell you, this guy just constantly blesses me You know, and again, I use his books and I quote his stuff, and I try to say up front, you know, he is a difficult person to read from. He uses words I'm definitely not familiar with, but then when I look up the words that he uses, like a nadir, I'd never used the word nadir. But when I seen how he used it, and then I understood the word, and it makes complete sense to me at the nadir point. And that just means at the point of the most extreme. And the way he uses it, it makes perfect sense. So many of those great big words that he does use, once you understand them, I didn't understand them. And I don't. A lot of them, I have to have the dictionary, so I have to look up words. And now then, I thank God for, what's her name on, or him, whichever one you want, him or her. Siri.
Oh, Siri.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in love with Siri too.
Got that.
I think wasn't it one of the guys on Big Bang Theory was in love with Siri?
Yeah. Raj had an episode where he fell in love with Siri.
He was in love with Siri. So just ask Siri and she'll tell you or find it for you. Yeah. So I wanted to read you this. This is a statement from Alvin Boyd Kuhn. And he says this: in the ideology of religion, the world has been constituted as the first member of the diabolical trinity of evil powers, malignantly conspiring to capture and subvert the divine soul of man. You know, you have to really think about what he says. You can't just read across it because you'll miss it. You have to think about what he said. What he just said then is the idea behind religion is the world is not the place we need to be. That's basically what he said. The idea religion has given us is that it is a diabolical place. And here's what he says: it is a diabolical trinity of evil powers. Now, religion has caused us to believe that so that they can sell us an idea to take us to a place that doesn't exist, i.e. heaven, so that we can disassociate ourselves from the world, whatever the world means. If you think about it, because in religion, you got to remember, religion wants you, don't go to the bar where we went last night, don't go and enjoy music, don't go to the baseball game, definitely don't go to the movie theater. Did you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, we couldn't go roller skating. That was just
exactly.
dancing, dancing on wheels.
Can't go roller skating.
Exactly what my youth pastor told us.
So I'll read this to you one more time so that you can get the content. There's just a lot of content in what he says. The ideology of religion. In the ideology of religion, the world has been constituted as the first member of the diabolical trinity of evil powers, malignantly conspiring to capture and subvert the divine soul. Did you get that now? In other words, the world is like a cancer, malignant cancer, that's trying to draw you and me into its evil trinity. And here's the evil trinity. The first one is the world, the flesh, and the devil.
Yep.
How do you think about it? The world, the flesh, and the devil? For centuries, the priestly hierarchy has exhorted its piously conditioned following to keep themselves unspotted from that trinity. You know, it actually is trying to tell us to disassociate ourselves from life because we don't even have it in their idea or in the idea that we embrace in religion. We don't have. And that is a forest. You cannot not have life if you don't have. You have life, period. And now we can do some I guess, wicked, corrupt, or I use the word evil. We can do evil things with life. We really can. But the thing about life is, i.e., the life of God, and there is no other, the life of God is the life of everything that is existing. period, whether it's this world or worlds beyond worlds. And there again, God being a very, very loose or bad term to try to explain that. So, I think Alvin, he just hits it so good. But let me read you a couple more lines that he says here in this book. And I want to share some things from the Scriptures. It says, in short, the influence of the world is believed always to be so potent as to threaten destruction to the pure nature of the soul, to befog its pure light and crush down its divine sensitivity. Now, if you hear these things and you're thinking as you're hearing these things, like in me, I'm thinking and Scripture starts just rolling around. For God so loved the world. You know, and then I start thinking, wait a minute, it doesn't seem like God's angry at it. But then religion tells us that God's so angry at it that He's going to destroy it.
1 John, we used to sing a little chorus. 1 John 4, 7 and 8. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. And that's straight out of 1 John 4.
Well, actually, we're going to get into the Gospel of John, because the Gospel of John uses the word world more than any other book in the Bible. Like something like 80 times, right at 80 times, just in that. And it's not even used 80 times in the whole, 160 times in the whole New Testament. It's used over half in the Gospel of John. And the Gospel of John, actually now they're beginning to realize that the Gospel of John was one of the most Gnostic, and is a Gnostic Gospel. It hadn't got anything to do with history and literalism. It is all a Gnostic Gospel. And so the more, and I've seen that for years myself, knowing that that's why even though it's a part of the 4 Gospels, it's not in harmony with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which seems to be a story more of the Son of God, which we are, which is us. And there
What's
again,
another word for Gnostic, or a definition?
Gnostic was a term used for the early church. It was not known as a Christian church until 326, the Council of Nicaea. Prior to that, it was the Gnostic church. So it was the church on fire. It was on fire by the knowing. The word Gnostic comes from the Greek gnosis. Jesus said in John 8, you shall know, that's the Greek word, gnosis, which is the root for the word Gnostic. A Gnostic is a gnosis. And so the early church was based on that, gnosis. It was based on that information that was already in you. It all exists inside you. That's what they were trying to say. That's what they were doing. And they were using all of the mythologies and pouring them into this story of the Son of God, which is the story of us. And that in the deposit of that if I know that, then I'm free. And if I don't know, and that's what the Catholic Church fought for hundreds of years. That's where if you read Fox's Book of Martyrs, where people were burned at the stakes, they were burned at the stakes simply because they wouldn't give up that Gnosticism. They wouldn't give up their knowing for this literal that they were trying to force mankind. Catholicism only won the battle by force, by murder, by you either bow to our ideology of the gospel or we will kill you, period. And so, a lot of people said, oh yeah, I don't want to die. Oh yeah, I will confess. I will get saved. I will do whatever. I'll jump through all your hoops. I don't want you killing my kids. But that's exactly how they did it. And they did it for hundreds of years through brute force.
That's kind of like the story of Daniel then.
Yeah, if you go back, exactly, they were doing the same thing. And if you go back and study the history, and it is available for anybody to go back and look at the first 1,000 years of the Catholic Church. If you look at those, why do you think that it was known as the 1,000 years of darkness? It was ruled and dominated by the Catholic Church.
That's why it was such a huge thing for Martin Luther to post his thing on the door.
Yeah. Breaking out from
He just didn't do that. And the truth is, Luther was just slightly different Catholic, but
But he saw some truth.
well,
Yeah, he did.
one of the biggest things he stood for was putting the Bible back in people's individual hands, whereas the Catholic Church controlled it. You didn't
Yes.
hear anything but what the priest
Just
said.
in the last 15 years, they started reading it.
Well, let me read you a little bit more of this. It says, in short, the influence of the world is believed always to be so potent as to threaten destruction to the pure nature of the soul, to befog its pure light, and to crush down its divine sensitivity. The celestial light is buried under the bushel of mundane concerns and cannot glow brightly from the hilltop for all to see. And then he goes into talking about what and how the church has done this. But if you think about it, if you have the light of God in you like the sun, even a cloudy day doesn't daunt or hinder the light of the sun. If we would think through that and realize that the world or nothing else can really dampen or hinder the power of the light of God that's all deposited in us. It may shade it, or it may cover it over temporarily, but that sun, that light is going to burn through whatever. And especially as we open ourselves up, that's one of the keys that I've used for years. If you can open your mind, you can think out of your box, but if you can't and don't open your mind, it's hard to get out of your box. And of course, the boxes are the things that we build. So I wrote this little note. I said, the whole idea that the world, the flesh, and the devil are and have been humankind's enemy, and that Satan, the devil, uses these three to condemn us and send us to hell, has and is a gross misleading from religion. And this is what Alvin Boyd Kuhn says now. He goes on and he said, thus, to fend the soul off from the contamination of the world in its spiritual ivory tower has been the ethical and spiritual objective of most religions. And you know how they've done it? The Catholic Church has done it by separating its monks and priests unto itself and teaching them celibacy, teaching them the things that are totally against the divine nature of God for their body. That's why the Catholic Church has been for thousands of years, hundreds of years, 16, 17, 1800 years, has been so grossly abusive to children. And its history is racked with it because it doesn't give neither the men or the women the divine use of their body. Wow, I mean, let me read just another paragraph and I'll disengage from Kuhn. He's hard to disengage from. Yet with trillions of other worlds into which to send his beloved Son, God so loved this one that he commissioned him to descend upon this minute speck of atomic dust in the cosmic universe. And that tiny world which God so loved and refused to condemn, religion has never ceased to hate. It's crazy, isn't it? You can hear the truth, to me, so clearly in what he's saying. Religion taught us just exactly the opposite of what God is. And it's amazing. And never has religious philosophy disclosed the remotest intimation as to why God was so moved to send his beloved offspring into this low place of defilement, nor has it made any attempt to account for the Creator's great love for this place. This, the fundamental question that the human mind must now or eventually answer, has been left wholly untouched. And I will say Selah to that myself, because I mean, I want to dig into this whole idea because it spawned out of this life that I was thinking about when I go back into the Old Testament and I look up the terms. If I go back into the Old Testament, for instance, if you want to go with me now to the book of Genesis, chapter 2, I want to show you the first time that the word life is actually used and mentioned here. And it's in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. Actually, it's not the first time that the word life is used. It's actually the second time it's used from the Hebrew. But the English changes it, and I'll show you that. I'll show you what they do to it. But verse 7, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life." That's the first time that but the Hebrew word che is used earlier. It's used actually in verse 30 of chapter 1. And here's what it says in verse 30. "And to every beast," that's the word che. Same word, same identical Hebrew word, che. But here it's called beast. Now, if we were to take that word being consistent, just be consistent, that's the first time the word che in Hebrew is used, Genesis 1:30, and here it's called a beast. "And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creeps upon the earth, whereon there is life," there is the word che. There the word beast is che. And if we come down to verse 7 and we stay consistent in English and use the word that they used in verse 30, let's just read it that way. It says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of the beast." That would change everything, wouldn't it? And then that's how we would look at it. He's just a beast. He's an animal. I agree that he can act exactly that way. I agree with that. He can. You know why he can? Because he has life in him and he can pervert it or he can get glory from it. He can glorify it or he can condemn it. Man has that ability. Why? Because man is the manifestation of God. Man is the visible, physical appearance of this energy system that we call God. So that's the first place that it's used in the Old Testament, and it's used and translated back and forth for the word beast or the word life. And it's the same identical word, and actually it just, if you break it down, che, it comes from the che'at or he'at, that's number 8, and the yod, number 10, male, female. And the che'at or the he'at, number 8, that's the symbol of eternity. Or if we are looking at, like I did last week when I quartered the circle up, put the cross in it, and you got 4 quarters of it, then those 4 quarters are fire, earth, air, and water, or carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, or yod, he, vav, he, etc., 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 etc. It just goes on and on and on. So if I can understand that, the 4 seasons represent that eternal movement, the figure 8, the che'at or he'at. So it has eternity within the ideology of the word, or of the glyph, and then it has the yod, which is the male-female, number 10, the masculine and feminine. And you put those together, and here's the definition they actually give for the word che. It means strong, or it means a running spring or stream. So if you think about that, and you look at a running, like, you know, I get water at the spring there in Varnell, and you can just go there and watch the water literally come up out of the ground. I mean, literally, it's just bubbling up. I forget how many hundreds of gallons a minute is coming up out of that spring. It's really phenomenal how much water is issuing out of that. But there's springs in Florida, huge springs in Florida, where there are millions of gallons coming up every minute. It's just, you know, big, big. Matter of fact, I went scuba diving with my brother Michael. This has been quite a few years ago, in some big river there in not far from Tallahassee in northern Florida. And I mean, a huge pool. I'm talking, that pool, I mean, there's nothing all around, and all of a sudden, here's this huge pool, and running out of this pool is a big river.
Cold water too.
Big cold water, yeah. And to swim down where that is coming up out of the ground, it's coming up with such force, you have to really work hard to swim down to try to get to the bottom of that cavern where that water's coming up, because it's like 20, 25, 30 feet deep right there.
You got a spring right there up there at Red Clay.
Exactly, right there in Cohata, just right above Cohata.
That's why the Cherokee settled there, was because of that spring.
And the water that's coming out of that spring is phenomenal. And so when I see that word J, I put that in my thinking, that running water. Well, you know, when I put running water, I come up with this every time, and this is where so much perversion that's the Hebrew word shamayim, shin, mem, yod, mem. This is the word for water. This is the glip right here for water. This is a glip. This is a glip for water. Both of those are water glyphs. The Mem 40 and the Mem 600, both of them are water. And this is the word translated for heaven. And if we can come back to the proper ideology of what heaven is, it's not where I go to get eternal life. It's what I am. I am heaven.
What if you are, that is eternal life.
When you marry the physical with the spiritual, you have the divine self. You. And that is heaven. So, and that is made from the utterance, which is the earth. And I'll show you another word for earth, which is not anywhere near the word eretz. And more, I mean, the twisting and the perverting of so many profound truths is just phenomenal to me. Let me go ahead and put these up here, because the four quarters of this Ein Sof, that's the circle of eternity. These four quarters, again, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, and you know, we put vowel points in that, and we use that to call Jehovah and associate Jehovah as Jesus. Religion has done us this number. When it never ever meant any of those things. It did not mean Jehovah as a typology of Jesus in the Old Testament. It actually meant carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. It meant those four elements that's common to the earth. So when you take the four glyphs of the word heaven and you lay them over this same glyph right here, you have the man from above and the man from below, or the woman from above, the woman from the below. You have mankind. I mean, it's just written everywhere, and it's in everything, no matter what and where you go. So when you're reading, and we're reading the word heaven, and in our mind we're projecting something out there, I'm going to go there and I'm going to have life. If I can reverse that and I can realize I am heaven moving about on earth, in earth, I live and I move and I have my being. It's just exactly, I don't recognize that as, I would be like a fish swimming in water saying I'm looking for the water. Now, would that not be pretty bizarre? Some fish, he's swimming around in the water and tells all his other fish, I'm looking for the water. Where's the water? I'm trying to find the water. Well, you're in the water. The water's in you. That's where we're at right there. In heaven. We're lost looking for heaven. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to get saved so I can go to heaven. Yeah. And you are heaven. You don't have to get saved and go to heaven. You are alive. And that's what, so you are Chad. We are this beautiful design of eternity, even though we're right here in this temporality. So, the world, Kuhn uses this triology of evil. The world, the flesh, and the devil. Now, you know good and well, you've always heard that your whole life, haven't you, in religion. That was the trinity of evil that you got to stay away from. And so I'm talking about the mass majority of the Christians don't go to a monastery. You know, what is there, 1 out of 10,000 that might go to a monastery, you know, to isolate themselves and become holy by doing that, by going through those hoops. Like you and me can't do that. We can't be that holy because we're contaminated. We're in the world. We got to go and do a job. We have to eat with them and sit down and talk with them and listen to their jokes and tell their jokes, you know, and do the stuff. And da-da-da-da-da.
You mean like Jesus did?
Yeah, kind of how he did it, wasn't it? Didn't he call him his friend?
Sat down with the sinners?
And that's why they said, you know, they throw stones at him because he did that. He drank with them.
Yeah.
He sat down with them. He ate with them. He hung out with them. Wow. We miss so much because religion has taught us how to look at this. Well, let's take the word world, and I want to use it from the Hebrew perspective. So go with me now to the book of Psalms. Psalms, chapter 18. And look at verse 15 with me. Just Psalms 18:15. Let's back up. We'll read this, verse 15. But just back up with me to verse 11. And let's read from 11 to 15. It says, and he made, referring to God, Elohim, that's who the subject matter is, God, Elohim, made darkness his secret place, his pavilion round about him where dark waters, look here, dark waters, thick clouds of the sky. At the brightness that was before him, this thick cloud passed, hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them. And he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of the waters were seen, and the fountains of the world were discovered at his rebuke, or at thy rebuke. Now, that word world is the Hebrew word tabol. T-A or T-E, it's use a vowel. Tabol. And it's made up of the Hebrew glyphs, the Tav, that's number 400, the Beth, that's number 2, which has to do with the container or the house, and the Lamed, that's number 30, has to do with maturity, has to do with learning, teaching, etc. And that's the word Tabol. And you know what it means? It actually means the land, the earth. That's what it means. So the word eretz, that's translated from the word earth, actually deals with the chemicals that are mixed with the word heaven to make the physical body. Genesis 1:1. But this word Tabal is actually a word that does mean the land, the dirt. But you don't ever hear that used. Nobody ever tells you that. Nobody ever brings that to your mind or to your attention. They don't tell you that that's what that word. And you can see the word as you break it down. Top, that's number 400. It actually has to do with time. So it has 4. That deals with time. You put 4, Yod He Vav He. Why? Because you're dealing with the sine wave. Time. So 400, it deals with time. That's it, with a divine essence. So it's divinity in temporality. So it's eternal, but temporal at the same time. And it's referring to the earth, referring to the dirt. And so that's how that word is used. And it's used many, many places in the Old Testament. We won't even go there and look at them. But I want you to go with me to the New Testament. To the Greeks And the Greek mythology, when they did this, the New Testament, John, go with me to John. The New Testament, weaving mythology in with much of the Hebrew stuff, if we don't understand it, we will miss what it's saying. And I will use an analogy of a character we're all familiar with. And we're only familiar with it probably through world literature. And that's the character Hercules. Everybody's familiar with Hercules and what? His 12 labors. It's just like King Arthur and his 12 Knights of the Round Table, which is just like Jesus and his 12 apostles, which is just like Jacob and his 12 sons. It's all the same thing. It's all saying the same thing. But the older of these is Hercules. Hercules is actually an Indian character that comes from the makeup of two words. The word Kala, which actually means a race or people, and Hera, which actually means a place. So Hera, a place, Kurlis, a race. It's a place of a race, and that's how they combine the word Hercules and his 12 labors. So, and again, here it is. It's this exact same character, this same sign, this same symbol, whether it's a circle with a cross or a circle with 12 pieces of a pie, like a big pizza pie with 12 slices. But it's all saying the same thing. So if you've got 12 slices, or if you've only got 4 slices, or if you just do it this way and you only have 2 slices, above and below, heaven and earth, or heaven and hell, either way, or summer and winter. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's all saying the same thing.
Or your waters above and your waters
Waters
below.
above, waters below. There's sheen men, gold men. And again, all of this, and you fit, you know good and well, you fit in here, even though you gestated for 9 months and you become shy of the full cycle, you still fit in there in your birth chart. You were born in this circle, this world. That's what we call it. So in the Greek we use 2 different words. John 1. Steve was quoting it a few minutes ago. We'll just go over there and look at it. John chapter 1. And gosh, this whole Gospel of John, we're going to spend some time in it because there's so much in it. But look at verse 9. It says, that was the true light which lighteth every man that comes into the world. Into the world. Now, that word world, you're familiar with it probably through the word cosmos. Y'all familiar with that word cosmos? Huh? Yeah. Well, look at it right there, verse 9. That was the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Look at it in John 3:16. That's the one you're most familiar with. Same identical word. For God so loved the world. Now, God's in love with the world. God sent His Son into the world, not to condemn it, and all that, but religion's trying to get me and you out of it. Religion's trying to get me and you away from it because it's contaminating, as Kuhn said in his discourse there. It's contaminating, and it's like a malignant cancer. It's trying to always lead us astray because we might join a ball club and play ball. Or we may even go to the movie. Or go to the dance. And God forbid that we do any of those things. God's so loved. Well, that word is cosmos. Y'all familiar with the word cosmos, don't you? You are. I know you are. But now, what does the word cosmos mean in the Greek? The word cosmos in the Greek actually means order or orderly arrangement. So, okay, so God loves His orderly arrangement. It's translated for world. Or in John 1:9, that was the true light which lights every man that comes into this order of arrangement, or this arrangement of order that's God's. Well, if you and me get rid of so many of the beliefs that have boxed us in and kept us from the freedom that we actually have, and we rearrange our thoughts and beliefs so that we believe the truth and we begin to be free. Then you know what we can do? We will embrace this thing. We'll fall in love with it. And we will recognize truly this is heaven in earth and on earth. And I'm right where I should be, and right where I belong to be, and right where I need to be.
The word I like in that verse is every. There's no picking and choosing in 1:9. There's no picking and choosing. It's every.
Yeah. Every, man. Every. Okay, go with me to John chapter 9. Now, this word world is used in the Gospel of John, like I told you, I think it's used almost 80 times. And it's that one word right there from the Greek, cosmos. And that one word means an order of arrangement, or an arranged order of things. That's what it means in the Greek. And then one time, this word that we're fixing to look at here in John chapter 9, look at verse 32. John chapter 9, verse 32. It says, since the world, this word is the only place in John that this Greek word is used. It's only used one time. And this word actually is the word aeon. And so if you look at that, since the world began, that word aeon means age, a period of time. And it's used in the other Gospels, it's used in Matthew and Luke to make it sound like God is going to bring the world to an end in destruction. And when we understand that word aeon in Matthew and Luke for world is not referring to this globe that we call the earth. It's referring to an age or a period of time. And do you know what God's saying? Ages, periods of time, come to an end. And you know what? Whether the age could be long or short, we should recognize that in our own life. Do you realize that many of us move in ages or periods of time in our life? We may move for 10 years in this particular time or age as something's going on in our life and move into something else. And you know what we don't do? What we have, I'm saying we, ought to say me. What I have more than any other problem is holding on to the thing of the age that I should have let go and got what I could get out of that age and move into the next one. Whether it's a 10-year period of life or if it's a whole span of life, 60 years, it doesn't matter. An age can be a year. It can be a moment in time. It's just like, you know, when I talked about space, a better word for the way we use the word would be space, because there's nowhere space is not. Space is eternal. But yet there can be points in space. Space can be limited, like the space of this room. I mean, from here to that wall back there. There's space here. So that wall represents the limitation of this space. But it doesn't limit space, right? So if we can say, we see that, we recognize that, and we won't embrace the things of the age that's past, we just release them and let them go. Isn't that hard? Have you ever found that to be hard?
Oh, yes.
We've always, there's a movie that constantly I think about it, or I saw it. It had to be 30 years ago or more, and it was, gosh, what is his name? He's such a, in that movie, he had seemed like he killed somebody, and he was wanting to become a priest, so he tied everything he owned in a black bag, and he drug that bag. He was going out to,
I know who you're talking about, man.
he was going out into the jungle to try to get free, to find a place to get deliverance from what he had done. And there were several other people going with him, and he would have to climb up these steep banks, and he's got this bag tied around his shoulders, and he'd get so high up in the bag he'd slide and he'd fall and pull him down. Just kept pulling him back. And all the bag represented was his past. It represented represented an age of time, a period of time in his life. That's all it represented. Every one of us have that. And the hardest thing it was for him to do, like it is for me to do, like it is probably for you to do, is to cut it and let it go. Anyway, he finally did that in that movie. Robert De Niro, probably one of the first movies he ever done. He was just young, a very young guy, Robert De Niro. This is the only place in the Gospel of John that this word world is used in this place. And that word actually means a period of time, whether it be long or short. And we'll look at that in other places. But that's the world. The flesh, when we begin to look at the flesh and the carcass, this physical body, I tell you, you can't look at it and say that it's corrupt, it's wicked, it's dirty, it's evil, it's all that. It is the tabernacle, it's the temple, it is the true church, it is the house God lives in. So there's nothing about it that's unholy. It is holy and precious, and it should be revered and should be reverenced. So the world, the flesh, and the devil just simply is the carnal mind and the thinking, whether there be a host of thousands of them, like the swine that run into the sea, of thoughts, carnal thoughts that just invade our mind constantly. Or they do mine. Or they try to do mine. They're getting less and less hold. You understand? I'm gaining more and more. You remember that book we started out this year on that, The Untethered Soul? That book is tremendous to help free us from the tethered mind. It tries to hold us back. It tries to hold us into places. So anyway, I'm going to stop right here. I wanted to throw this out to you, and I want to continue to share on this thing of life, because life is ongoing. It's not something that I live for 80, 100, 120, 140, 100, 200 years, whatever, and I quit living. I live this life in this tent, this flesh, this house, this church, this body of God, and then I lay this body down. And the body, it desecrates, goes back into the rot. But my life don't. Your life don't. And you can call that eternal, or you can call that everlasting, but it's not something that you're going to have. The more we can embrace the very fact of the idea, I do have eternal, everlasting life. But if we could just totally drop those words, they're not used at all in the Old Testament. If we could totally drop that and realize that I do have life, I have the life, I live and move. God lives and moves me, in me, through me, as me. And the more I can embrace that, the more I can free myself from the past and live in the moment. Because there's no other time, really, is there? The future is just an idea, and the past is something I'm dragging. So if I let them go, and I just go for right now, I begin to live right now, then hallelujah, I think we can go out and enjoy it.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Okay, I'll just quit right there.